Ba 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 ba.
Ooh.
I've pressed go live. No, don't do that. You'll hurt your head. There we go.
Did hurt my neck,
Oh
not
no.
my head. I did.
Hello, everybody, and good evening. Can you hear us okay? And can you hear both of us? That's important.
Especially if I talk. If I don't talk, it's going to be harder to hear me.
Very true.
Why am I so much taller than you?
I said I could move you around. There you go. How about that?
I don't know. There's a
Yeah,
like
there's
30
a
second
delay.
delay. Whoa! That's some good moving. What's this blue thing above my head?
Oh, it's so I've got a 50-50 split, and then I
Yep.
can align things properly without having.
Ah.
OBS is a bit crap when it comes to being able to align sources. Anyway,
OBS troubles recently.
No, that's just general. It doesn't snap to the center for some reason. Good evening, everybody. Hey, how you doing, Yann?
Hello, Roderick. I'm a little sleepy, but otherwise well. How are you?
I've had a really, really admin-y day.
I've had a really codey week.
And I will get those animations to you by the end of today. By hell or high water, or snow, or thunderstorms, or something
Boom
else.
of night.
Yes. Hello, Roderick. So,
hello, Roderick.
yes.
Can we be heard?
I hope so. There's definitely a delay, and I don't know why the admin side has a delay. You said hello, Roderick, didn't you? And it just came through as I said that. So, no, that's great. We've got some exciting stuff to go through this evening.
We have. We've got lots of fun things. We've made some real progress on our upcoming yet unnamed action RPG for Godo. The best name I've come up with so far is the Godo Action RPG, which stands for
GARP,
which is a problem. So I don't know if I want to release a giant Kickstarter course for GARP, but we'll see.
Unless the main character walks along, GARP. No one understands this character.
Could be.
But he seems alright.
Yep. But yeah, we've got lots of fun features going, and this week Mikey's hosting, so he'll be able to actually show you the game at more than 3 frames a minute,
which should be useful.
Will be.
We'll show you all that in a moment. Yeah. So tonight, I would say that we're about 90% certain as to what we want to teach at what stage as well. So we'll go and show the game in a few moments, and then we'll sort of have a look at the syllabus and the structure that we're thinking about going through. And obviously, any feedback you guys have, anything you think we might be missing, all those sorts of things would be awesome to hear about.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, we're designing a series of courses, some larger than others, for making a 3D action role-playing game in Godo. This is going to be a sort of behind-the-shoulder, hacky-slashy, magic, jumpy, dodgy kind of role-playing game with inventory management and all kinds of other fun things. And we're going to have a blender side of it that at the very core level is going to be very basic, making assets, and if we get enough interest, enough stretch goals, is going to include things like character creation and rigging and a bunch of other things.
Yeah, definitely. So at the moment, we're going through the process of implementing certain systems. So it's not complete at the moment. It is very much in alpha stage at the moment. And as we develop these systems, we're making sure that they're working. We'll make sure we're taking a good approach to them. And then afterwards, as always, comes the challenge of putting that knowledge into teaching, which is completely different. I think I will load up the RPG.
Yeah, let's see what we have. So since you guys saw this thing last, assuming you watched last week, we have added the ability to draw and sheath weapons, only being able to attack when you draw and sheath weapons, attack animations, attack sounds, a light attack, a heavy attack, an inventory system that allows you to pick things up from the floor and swap them around. And now I've gotten rid of the bug where if you pick up an object from the floor and put it onto another object, the object you put it on doesn't just disappear. Instead, it drops.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of, was it Oblivion? Where if you pause the game and put a certain number of items and drop them all at once, they're in the same space, but when they come out, they duplicate. So I remember doing it with cabbages, and because they had the physics in there, the world was full of cabbages. No one likes cabbages.
I've also put in the first pass at a stamina and damage system, and Mikey's been working very hard on new animations and things. So, Mikey, do you want to show us what we've got?
I'm gonna push a button, and hopefully it works. So some of this will be familiar to those who have have seen what we've been up to in the past. This is just looking around the world editor. So we've got a lovely overworld scene, and over here we've got a path down to a dungeon. Oh, that was a good level of zooming out. So let's press the play button and see what we can do.
Play. I'm 30 seconds behind, so I won't see what they're doing.
That's
Now,
absolutely fine.
We've got some current systems in place. At the moment, you can't move while attacking, and every time you sprint or attack, your stamina will go down. And if you get completely exhausted, you have to wait for the stamina to come back to full before you can use it again.
So one thing we can demonstrate, something that Yann's just implemented at the moment, and again, this is a test, so we walk into the fire. We're not going to take continuous damage at the moment. That's something to implement. Just testing whether or not entering an area will trigger death.
What happens if... Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm just laying down under the stars. Don't mind me.
There's another fun thing I've been playing with, which I'm very proud of. Mikey, do you want to show them what happens if you press F?
Oh, yes. 3, 2, 1. Ah, ragdoll. I will do that again in a bit. So I want to pick up these potions here because they're nearby and I can pick them up. Boop. And where should we go? So if I start running, you can see the stamina bar is now going down. And if we run out of stamina, is that right? Yeah. If we run out of stamina, you can't run again, or you can't use an attack as well until that's fully recuperated, and then we can start.
So basically, the game has a concept of exhaustion. And if you're exhausted, you have to wait for your stamina to recover. Now, we could put in stamina potions, we could put in health potions, but at present, you're just out of luck.
Whee! I'll never get that'll never get old. Anyway, so
It's way more fun than it has any right to be.
Yeah. So we have our inventory here. We've got a couple of potions on the table, haven't we?
You should. Jessica says we should implement ragdoll when you run out of stamina. You just sort of plank on the floor. No.
That would be epic exhaustion. So, are these potions?
Yeah.
Nice.
They even have tooltips.
I want the potions. Give me the potions. Come back here, potion.
They also have light attack and heavy attack.
Oh, yes. Let's whip out my weapon. There we go. Wow, nice. And we can... Oh.
So these are all very basic systems. Like I just made those bars at the top today, and they're effectively placeholders, right? They're just there to see how it works. I still need to put in a container system so you can actually loot chests and put things in chests. And my next big thing is going to be implementing AI so that we can have NPCs and NPC combat and patrols and things.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I'm poking at Godo's navigation system because the built-in navigation system works fine with grid maps, but it won't work with it won't work with procedural generation, and two, it won't work with doors. So if a door closes, there's no way for it to know you can't go this way. Now we could have it so an NPC approaches a door, the door will open. That's fine. But if you close a door in NPC, what happens? So with all that said, I could also use a plugin. There's a really nice plugin called Navigation Lite, which uses the Detour navigation system, which Unity uses. But that doesn't work with grid maps. So we have to figure out which direction we want to go in there.
Yeah, this feels so much more developed in just 1 week.
Yeah.
Feels so...
And thank you, Reus.
I've run out of stamina. Uh-oh. I turned on sticky keys.
Yeah, don't turn on sticky keys.
Do you want to?
I mean, you can hold stamina down. It will just do it.
Wee, smash.
Yep. Yeah, placeholders. I mean, to be honest, those bars are perfectly fine for a course. Like, we don't need to be making the assets. We do want to make some assets, though, especially for inventory management, because I kind of need an icon for everything you can pick up, unless I can find a good way of generating an icon from the actual 3D mesh. So there's a lot of little things going on here, especially when you're doing things like physics bones and navigation, and I'm going to implement some behavior trees and maybe move to a state machine design thingamy, design pattern. There's a lot of things we want to look at here, but I think we've really come a long way in a week. And with the extra animations that Mikey's got planned, there's a lot of fun things we could do with dodging out of way of attacks at the cost of a little bit of stamina. And maybe even a few other attacks. And we do want to have some different weapon choices. So the idea is to have single-hand weapons, two-handed weapons, and magic. And your character can do one of those three, depending on what they're carrying. But that's kind of where we're going.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Right, let me bring my face back and your face as well. Which button's that? That's this one. Nice. So there you go. There's the game as it stands at the moment, and as we said, there's so much more to implement and so much more to play with when it comes to that. And we want your feedback at this point in time as to what you like about what you see. Obvious questions. There will be things that we're always going to say the answer to is, yeah, we're still developing it, which is always going to be the case. But we'd
We
also
want to
like,
put jumping in
yeah,
because it's been taken out.
yeah.
Also, oh wait, did they see the character? I don't think they've actually seen the new character, have they? Because the last time was the GD Quest mannequin.
Oh no! So this is our new placeholder character for the moment.
So since you guys saw it, the entire movement and camera code has actually been rewritten from scratch. And Mikey didn't actually show, but like getting the camera to zoom in and out is much smoother than it was before. There's a lot of little tweaks that's been happening. So Mikey's got that new character, which is just the base mesh, and the idea is from there we can change bits out and we can add clothing, have different heads.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole idea behind the base character is quite literally it will be the character you pick up to develop the next character for, or the next NPC. Maybe not a monster or anything along those lines. Those will probably require unique base meshes. But having a base mesh to start from to just generate different torsos, bottom halves, heads, styles, etc., so that we can mix up the whole. Add player customization essentially. And if you're
and different kinds of NPCs, because at this stage when I start playing with NPCs, I'm going to make an NPC and just give them a different color,
and
because that's what I need at this stage. But for a game, we don't want that. I mean, unless we're doing something like Super Hot, which is extremely visually stylized, right? We want we want a little bit more character than that.
A little bit. Well, we need him clothed first. Well, one of the big things, of course, that we can do once we've got different parts of modularity for the characters or NPCs, it means that if you see an NPC with a heavy armor on, you know they're going to be someone heavy. If they're wearing a cloak, they're probably a mage. We can start doing that sort of affordance for the player. Yeah, if they've got a white wig that's slightly curly, they are the judge, and you know how that film ends. I don't, but. So
so there's a lot there that we're looking at, and we want to make this even more responsive and fast. So the idea is we're going to give the player the ability to dodge in all four directions. We're going to add strafe in. At the moment, strafe feels like sliding because there's no separate animation for strafing. So if you're going forwards and you press A or D, you don't actually change your animation, you just change your direction.
So it feels like you're power sliding around corners, which is not really the feel we're going for. Since we're trying to step away from doing things about cars and vehicles at the moment. Oh, wait a minute,
we can make the player a car.
Wait a minute. You've moved again. Let me just shift you around.
An old man. I'm going to move.
And I shall put you in your place. I have the power.
I've got the power.
Do you think it'd be a good time to talk through the Trello board?
Talk through the Trello board. Let's talk through the Trello board. Do you want to be in charge of Trelloing?
I don't know how to share this properly. I'll probably zoom in and just scroll up and down. It's hard to guide people's eyes because I can't. They'll be reading, words and words. It's not always great, but yeah, let's just try it. So we've got to share it. There we go. So we have a series of vertical slices that all grow upon each other and rely on stuff before the majority of the time. And I'll just give an overview for the moment. So we've got the action adventure begins. So this is going to be the core experience. Then we've got the overworld, visiting the surface. We kind of try to name them in such a way so it's part of an RPG journey. So
To clarify, like if we look at the core experience, the one on the far left,
yep,
this is the basic what we would get at just basic funding. Like what's the core of this game? Everything else is we want to add this, but that's kind of effectively they're ideas for stretch goals, right? The first stretch goal would be everything in the overworld, so additions to the courses. And the idea at the moment, and this is all subject to change, is if you back the Godo course, you get that Godo course and the stretch goals that come with it.
yeah.
Like, there's no reason to say, oh, you got this one, but you didn't get this stretch goal. Like, that's not how this works. So we've got to get the package that people want. Like, we don't want to like pressure people to get things they don't like. That feels weird. And we've also got to make it easy enough for people to give us more money if they can and they want to. Because one of the things we've struggled with before is we have a bunch of things at the low end and a bunch of things at the high end, but there's nothing that you can easily do in the middle there.
Yes, and all of these, no matter what we, the jump from each one will be relatively minor in terms of just keeping the momentum going and keeping the journey going as we go up through all of these different, I don't know what to call it, different stages, I suppose, different levels, perhaps. So we got to character creation before, and then we've got on quests. So all of these things are relatively around the whole idea of setting quests, going off on them, setting targets that you can go back through. I don't know why we've got quests and questing. There might be some duplicates along here. We've got further customization, and then as we go further up, we'd start talking about smarter AI rather than just I see you, you're within a certain range of me, I will just attack, which is obviously basic, straightforward AI. And then expert combat is all about upping the ante in terms of incorporating different types of attacks, making it far more dynamic, more than just a hacky slashy game. And then we've got some extra things on the end there as well.
And there's a lot of like further detail we can go into there, but when we're talking about things like better AI, it's not just a question of like, oh, let's have a behavior tree. It's let's add some depth to that. So let's say some NPCs are terrified of fire, or some NPCs will try and take cover while they shoot you with bows, or like let's try and make that a more interesting thing. But that takes quite a lot of research. A couple of things. Daz, hi Daz, has said changed a lot to an Ice Kingdom and give everyone full slide. Totally doable. Why not? Rayus. It seems like the only way you can pick things up is by opening the inventory. Yes, currently that is true. That is the only way you can pick things up because I was testing the inventory rather than the pickup mechanic. You are right. It is kind of tedious, and I do want to change it so that when you're looking at an object, so it's in the center of your camera, or some other method, it'll highlight, and then you can press pick up, and if there is space in your inventory, it'll move it to your inventory. But that is all doable. Oh, I saw my hand for a moment there.
Oh, yes. I just resized you and then realized that if I did resize you when I went back to this screen, you'd be tiny. So I undid that resizing. That was accident. Anyway, while you were talking, I was going to bring you back. But now let's go back to the slide here, because there's a couple of things that I think would be great to point out. And that's what these colors mean. They can't see you, so.
Oh, I was pointing.
I know.
Oh, you had me on screen just long enough to see me yawning because of my lack of sleep.
That's fine. That's fine. So we've got these red ones. So we've already got a dungeon asset pack, but we certainly want to expand on that and make sure that you've got lots of assets to use within the course, and also particle assets, UI assets, and a character asset that's all rigged up and animated, ready for you to use in game. So these are all assets that you're going to get. They're going to be all set up for Godo as well, which is incredibly important because, man, is it difficult to get the pipeline right into engines sometimes, especially when you're taking animations and putting them onto rigs and trying to manipulate the character and then getting it out, making sure that the actions are all there and baked in. So these are all asset packs. So anything that's red will basically be something
Things
that you
we
can
give.
use, things that we are going to give you, things that you can use in your own projects as well. And depending on how far we go along this chain, depends how many asset packs there will be.
Daniel asks, hello, Daniel. Would all the modules of this course be accessible to the lifetime bundle, or does it work differently if it's a Kickstarter? No. If you're one of our lifetime members, you get access to everything we make as Canopy Games, and not everything we make as individuals. Like if I make a chair, it's not yours. But you get access to everything we make as a company as long as the company exists. Like that's what the promise is, right? You just get every course, every asset pack. That's the thing. So if we release it as Canopy Games, you don't have to buy it again. That's what we're promising you. You are welcome to find other ways to support us on the Kickstarter as well, because that has come up from some of our lifetime members. It's not an expectation, and you certainly don't need it. You will have access to all of this.
Being a lifetime backer means that you're supporting us very early on in our journey. And obviously, as we grow, lifetime will always be an option for people, but eventually it will just go up in price, which is quite natural, along with the amount of content that will be available. So there are a couple of other things in here. We've got the orange ones. So let's go back to the screen. So
we'll get back to the screen.
We're going back to the screen. So the orange ones are, I'm going to say, sort of art type ones. So they may be Blender
visual assets, or no, visual courses.
Visual courses. Yeah, that's a good name. So they may be Blender, they may be Critter, if we're talking, or something,
GIMP, or
GIMP.
A Sprite, or I don't know what we're using yet. We haven't got there yet.
But it will depend on what we're teaching, and we'll pick the appropriate, hopefully low cost, or even better, free tool to be used for that. One of the things that Yann and I have been discussing recently is about textures. And textures don't really feature in our RPG.
Yeah, it's kind of a stylistic choice we made at the beginning.
It also allows us to swap out things very easily and use Godo to actually change those assets within the engine itself. So we've made that active choice. However, even though the game is going to probably focus on that style, we'll make sure in the arts sections there is actually texturing going on, so that if you wanted to take it that way with your game, you can, no problem at all. Then we've got design stuff. So there's very few green are more, I labeled them green because I wanted to say evergreen. So there will be concepts that don't focus purely on a particular engine or a particular program. So a game design document, as long as you're writing things down and thinking about how your game's playing out, you don't need a game engine to do that bit. Level design as well. Obviously, we're going to be focused on Godot, but all of the... Oh, hello, Yann. Hello. So if you are focusing on level design, we're going to use Godot to show you all of that, but that doesn't have to be the case. And again, you can block things out in Blender, for instance.
You could see my mouse?
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know you could see my mouse on Trello.
Can you?
I don't know. I just moved my mouse and you went, hello, Yann.
No. I went down to the bottom here and went onto Discord and you pop up.
Oh, that's sad.
And then the blue ones, they are going to be predominantly Godot focused. And I will change the way I say Godot, and Godot.
I mean, I say Godo, so you say Godot, how you like.
Yeah. Well, I keep mixing it up. I don't know.
We also have Prupal one. What's Prupal?
Prupal. Oh, that's external. So I'd be talking to Paul, who's done the grease pencil course with us, and I'd be talking to him after the stream to basically talk about if he can help out with concept art. It's something he's done in the past, so he's lived and breathed it, and so it would be great to have him on board and creating concept art as well, showing you how to, from the beginnings, basically, how your world's going to look, how you can focus on generating different character styles and all that. It won't be how to design a specific character or how to design a specific world. It'll be almost an evergreen course in that particular instance. I should imagine by the end of it, if you can pick up a pencil and a piece of paper, you can probably do that course. But it's not fleshed out yet. That's the thing. We can talk.
And it's not even confirmed yet. So
yes.
So yeah, the basic chapters are more or less where we want them. I'm going to actually look at my Trello because it's higher definition on my screen.
I'm going to see if I can open this board up for comments.
Okay.
I don't know how to do that, so I'm going to click around for a few minutes and see how that's done.
I think you just share the Trello.
I'll work it out.
I would very, very much like to get all the way to the right to the game juice, where we do things like sound effects and voiceovers and shaders and particle systems and post-processing and inverse kinematic to surfaces, so your feet will actually match the terrain. All kinds of fun things you can do. I have a tendency to design these things as if we're making an indie game, so we don't actually need to get to that point. But I think the important one is, one, what we're calling the adventure begins, right? Which is just how to create the level, like physically create it as well as design it. Basic combat, how to code your UI, so inventory management, health, stamina, whatever else you need it, like how to implement drag and drop in your game. That's
there we go.
big one.
Just bringing it back onto the screen now so people can see it again.
Yeah. Various in-game options and settings. And then going into how to use the built-in asset library. We're using a fair number of external tools in this, like the God Rays plugin, like the Scatter plugin for the foliage, like the Rivers plugin for the big stream. There's a bunch of stuff we're doing in. It's a very simple little thing, but how do we use it? And how do we set up these specific tools to make our game look pretty? And that leads us to environments in Godo. Like, we have two very different environments that have a very distinct feel. And I'm actually quite happy with them. There's a couple of things I do want to change with the basic one, specifically to do with sound effects, because they make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And Mikey left Godo running in the background yesterday without realizing it, and had this very pleasant stream sound effect in the background that he hadn't noticed.
Yes.
And then we start getting into the really complicated stuff, right? We start talking about multi-weapon types and classes. And that's things like, okay, so we have a magic user. They can only use magic items, whatever the magic weapon is going to be. Maybe it's going to be a bracer or a gauntlet or a wand, but each one's going to give you access to different kinds of, benefits. Maybe we'll have different axes and swords and hammers and frying pans, because a frying pan is a great weapon, as you know, if you've ever seen Tangled.
I've just posted the link, by the way, in the chat, which I think has opened it up so people can view the board, and I believe they might be able to comment on it as well.
Very nice.
Then
we want weapon switching, which is not just drawing and sheathing the weapon, but actually switching between different types of weapon, equipping different types of weapon. And not just, this is the axe, this is the sword, but we have 5 different axes in our inventory, or an axe, a sword, a frying pan, a rubber chicken, whatever else it might be. How do we want to put them in? Jess is making fun of my nice topical pop culture reference. Look, I'm 45, okay? As far as I'm concerned, it goes Nirvana and Faith No More, and then TikTok.
That went completely over my head as well.
Inheritance and classes is going to be structuring this whole thing so that we can really boil down how we design all the objects and characters in the game. For example, a weapon a sword is a type of weapon, which is a type of equipable, which is a type of item.
Yeah.
Right. So how are we going to set that up? A player is a type of character and has to have these things and different things, and really how to structure this in a object-oriented programming way as possible.
Well, one of the things that you can get a bit in a pickle about, and why this exists further down the line rather than from the get-go, is, and I'm certainly guilty of this to a massive extent, when you start developing something and you know that it might grow, you start putting in stuff to accommodate its growth. But then you're dealing with all these systems and setups and working out different class structures, but you've never needed them up to that point. So what we want to do is make a functional game first, and then as we expand the game, you have a real reason why you actually need the inheritance. Otherwise, it becomes a real pain in the backside to try and manage all of the different
And it's one of those things where
facets of
if
the
you
game.
have a really strong design pattern at the beginning, and it'll really come into its own as the game gets bigger,
Yeah.
right? If you're making a simple 1 or 2 level platform game, honestly, you can get away with it. But if you're making something that you're expecting players to play for 10, 20, 30 hours, there is no way to do that.
Yeah.
After that, we start getting into trying to make this a roguelite. Well, I say trying to make this, making this a roguelite.
Let me go back to the screen. Oh, that's all of us. There we go.
So at this point, we're talking about procedural generation for dungeons, modular dungeons, so that we can actually procedure generate them in a pretty way. Procedural player characters, so you don't just say, this is your character. When you die, there is permadeath. You move on to the next character, but it's a roguelite, so there's going to be something that's carried on. Maybe you've unlocked certain things, or you've bought certain facilities for your village, or something like that. So there's some sort of progression, but there's a randomized experience which will eventually lead to that character's death. Mikey looks like he wants to say something. What do you want to say, Mikey?
No, that was just me pointing out on here. I've switched back over so everybody can see what we're talking about, and then I was completely failing at scrolling along. So we were talking about here the procedural generation of roguelite, this area here.
As you can see, we're looking at modular weapons, because the idea with that asset pack is if we're going to procedure generate items, then let's do that in code as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic, because that really does open up the variety. And you can end up, if we add naming in there, we can end up with some very funny names for the weapons.
No, I mean, I already have plans for that. And a loot asset pack, because, if you're going to be doing a dungeon crawler, let's have lots of shiny things to sell.
Yeah, definitely.
After that, we start getting into character creation, and I think actually this is much bigger on the visual assets side.
Yes, definitely.
Character design and rigging and animating, that is big. Like the poor Mikey spent 2 weeks just playing with the character and the rigging and the meshing and the animating and the rigging and the armature and the meshing.
Well, it's been let me just switch over so we can chat. So it's been a real joy and frustration running through trying to get not only a base character made that you can expand on all the time. So I'm not going for a unique character to begin with. We're going for a generalized character, and then from there, obviously developing them into whatever character type it happens to be. But then with the rigging and animating, there's so many things that trip you up, and I've had lots of fun going through. I've tried pulling in Mixamo animations as well. That is a load of fun, because you've got scaling issues with the armature, which I clocked as I sent something over to Yann, and then Yann attached the axe, and it became like a huge, great big thing attached.
Well, no, it was worse. The axe was tiny.
Oh,
the axe was 1%, and then when I scaled it up, Godo was saying, "You've just scaled up collision, so I'm going to ignore that." Like, the pop-up told me at runtime the scaled collision will just be ignored.
So I thought at first that, you know what we'll do? We'll just go and grab a ton of pre-made animations and bring them all across, and it's not as straightforward as it first seems. You run into a lot of real-world problems when you actually start using it. I've seen lots of this is how you bring all of these across, but that's not the key. The key is, are they usable after doing that? And the answer is no. But
And it's the little things like one of the animations, in fact, I could show this in a minute, is this really nice power attack where you sort of do a running jump and an overhead smash.
yes.
But, well, let me actually show this. I'm going to
Yeah.
open up my Godo and then share my screen. So,
That's
wait,
fine.
Godo's open. Yann, what are you doing?
All right.
Yann, is this your first time? Ah, okay.
Right. I need to show everybody you. So you're going to change size when I do this, I'm pretty sure. Yes, you become larger. There you go.
We just need my screen.
Yeah, but I need to move the window that your screen's on. There we
Well,
go.
let me know when.
Yeah, we're ready.
I seem to have frozen Godo.
No.
There we go. Okay. So, here is our character. And as you can see, it's an RPG player that currently inherits from RPG character with a bunch of physics bones. So I can do ragdoll. All of this is just exploratory. This is not how we actually organize it. And as you can see, look at the bounding box. That is the axe. But leaving that aside,
Mega axe.
if I disable the animation tree, so I can actually use the animation player manually, and we go to sword heavy attack.
Yes.
That's a great attack, right? But look, bring up my collision shape. Here's the character. Here's the mesh. So at the end of the animation, the character is going to be here. If you run into a wall, or if you do this in front of a wall, the mesh is just going through the wall. So we need to change the animation so that the mesh stays where the character is, and then I move the character in code, because otherwise the collision won't work.
Yeah, we need that character to be basically where that collision mesh is. And if
at
you're
all
not,
times.
And if you're not controlling it in the engine, you suddenly have a load of edge cases. Okay, this one-off thing, you may be thinking, well, hang on. That's no problem at all. I just move the collision shape, which Godo won't like anyway. That could cause no end of issues. But also,
you can, but then what happens at the end of this animation?
But also, if you're moving the collision, you maybe he jumps. But what happens if the collision doesn't follow? It can get really messy. And imagine it's not just this one move. It could quite easily be a roll to the side or a dodge, or I think many of these will do a similar thing.
A few of them. I'm trying to find another one.
Yeah.
While we're here, let's take a quick gander at our animation tree. It's all, again, very exploratory, but this is a fun little thing because we have a mix of animation blend nodes, which are these things, right? All these animations going into blends.
Yeah.
So I can say, okay, so let's get rid of the collision shape so we can actually see the character. And let's stop that. And physical bones, great. So here's our character, and the character is idle, and I'm just going to move to walk, right? And actually, we're not walking, we're sprinting. So all of that is accessible in code, nice and easy. But I have several different possible idle moves, and I want to loop between them. And I have a different idle depending on whether or not you're armed. So what I've done is I've put in a state machine animation tree inside the animation tree, and that allows me to figure out how the loops are going to work. So we have these loops. We've got idle 1, idle 2, idle 1, idle 2, idle 3, and they're just going to go, when you get to the end of one, automatically progress the other. At any point, we can say equip axe, and that will immediately, from wherever we are, transfer to this equip axe. At the end of which we go into the sword idle animation, and we stay there until we say go back to idle. So if I show you what that looks like, here we go. If I show you what that looks like, we're at idle 3. If I travel to axe equip, it just goes there. And now if I travel back to, let's say, idle 1, it'll go through axis arm, and at the end of it, they're there. So we've got this state machine inside our animation tree, and it gives so much control, so much potential to what we can do there. So I'm really happy with that. Yeah, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so I can answer some questions. I'm warning Mikey before I just do it.
I need to make you large again, and then I can move you across.
Yes, we can remove the root motion.
I'm gonna jump in there and say you have lots of fun when you remove the roots, because the root is the hips, and the hips, yeah, it's part of, if you tilt the hips, if you remove that functionality, a lot of the animations start looking really odd. For instance, the hips are often used to change the height of a character. So as they're walking or running, they naturally bob up and down.
No, he means not the bone. Remove the root of the animation.
Oh, okay. I'll carry on talking anyway.
Yes, you can remove the root animation. We're trying to see if we can give the animations in a way that you don't have to. Because it seems silly having that part of the animation in there and then not using it. Now, if you're just importing pre-made animations, then you're going to use that solution. But if we're going to be teaching you, here's how we're making the animations for this game, then putting that animation in the first place, or putting that movement in the first place, just to remove it, is a really weird journey.
Yes. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
So I gave that a bit too much thought.
I mean, that's fair. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot we're interested in. One of the things I really like is I'm using the Hungry Proton Trails plugin.
Yeah.
And I'm switching that on at certain points in the animation with sound effects. I don't know if the sound effects are coming through when Mikey's streaming the video.
I can certainly hear them. I think they should be.
But it means when you start attacking, the axe leaves a trail, and then it stops leaving a trail.
Yes. So I think whilst we're midway through, it's a great time to actually show the game off again.
Yeah, because we've had some people join us.
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing to do. So we've got our game here. This is the upper game world. If you've been following along, you may have seen this in the screenshots. We've got this area down here with the dungeon. And yeah, let's go and press play.
And Mikey, press F to pay respects. Sorry.
In the chat, yeah. So I'll start off.
in the game, because F is floppy mode.
Floppy mode! So everything here is in alpha. We'll preface that at the time. So this is a simple test of ragdoll. There's no real extra to be done with that for the moment, but there's something that we could potentially do at the end of a death state. So talking about that, we've got our lovely
certain
fire
types of attack, like an explosion, or if you take if you get your health a certain amount below 0, like if you take a really heavy hit, then we can enable ragdoll instead of a pre-canned death.
Yes, pre-canned death. So we've got a fire here, and the observant of you will be saying, well, why have you only taken 50% damage? Again, just to test whether or not an entity can damage us.
Yeah, I put in health and stamina today, so...
Yes, so another thing that we've got, in fact, we worked out earlier that there's actually quite a bit that's changed the characters new. As you can see here, we don't have, I'm going to be deliberate here, we don't have a strafe animation yet, so we get this sliding effect. Again, once we've got the animation in here, which won't be long.
Try the camera zoom.
So we can zoom out, and we can zoom back in, which I didn't know we could do.
Yeah. I forgot to tell you.
Okay, I'll stop that now. Running. So running, if you look at the very top here, uses up stamina.
Mm-hmm.
And if we run out of stamina, well, you can't run anymore. Now,
not only can you not run anymore, you can't use any stamina till the stamina bar's back.
Including your weapons. So let's grab the weapon out here. Yep, you could, let's press it once instead of twice. And you could definitely hear that, I hope. Whoosh, whoosh. But you can see that if you run out of stamina, you can't attack again. So this would be a gameplay mechanic where you just have to be wary of how much energy you have left. And we can have potions as well. So we could quickly go and drink a potion of stamina. Orange Euglantis. Oh, dear. Yann?
Have you not seen the tooltips yet?
This appears to be a potion of reading. It is well read. I feel like that should have "it's well read" in it.
I mean, they're tooltips. They're easy enough to fix.
A blue potion that does a thing. Oh, and so we can drop things on the floor. and obviously disappear from them. They're no longer there. Come back again, and we can pick them up. And obviously, I'm out of range of the red one now. So
Now, one thing we did as an experiment that I really enjoyed was we played with the idea of basically when you start powering up a heavy spell,
yeah.
why not have it so the area around you changes its gravity so that all rigid bodies start floating up slowly until the spell goes?
Oh, that looked
And we
amazing,
played with
didn't
it,
it?
and it looks great. Like we had all these potions just slowly bobbing up around us, and then we moved out of the way, and they all fell to the ground.
So another thing that we discovered was because we don't have an animation specifically for drawing the weapon whilst walking, I've put the weapon away, but until this animation finishes, whoop. So there are lots of interconnected things you've got to be aware of when animating. Some of
The
them,
big one is attacking while moving, because it turns out most people in real combat don't like swinging a heavy weapon while running because your center of gravity goes everywhere. So it's hard to find good animations, like placeholder animations that do that. So why not have it so you can't move and attack at the same time?
I'm gonna go. Only gonna take 2 of these. I feel like having a stock there might be fun.
I'm glad you approve, Roderick. I'm quite proud of them.
So yes, there's lots to still be implemented. This is coming along. So
Yes, we're actually using animation blending right now. For instance, we're blending from idle to walk and from walk to sprint. We're blending from idle to draw weapon.
there appears to be a floating torch.
Yes,
That's
and at no extra cost.
excellent.
There used to be a wall there. I didn't move the torch. You're fine. It's been there for 2 months and you've just noticed it. It's fine. It's an Easter egg.
No, it's a skull. But yes.
I did play with one thing that I didn't show you, actually. I made the character out of glass.
And it's like you're playing the
It
Predator.
looked great. I could talk you through how to do it if you like.
Go on then.
Do you want to try it live?
Let's try it live. Let's shut the game down. Let's go to
game down. Go open the player scene.
Player.
I actually can't see your screen because of the delay.
Oh yes.
Okay,
Actually,
so you're in the player.
I think you can if I do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so RGB player scene. Yes, we're in there.
Yep. Okay, so I want you to click on or open up the armature, open up the skeleton, click on base mesh.
Base mesh. Yep.
Okay, on the right hand side, you'll see material. Add a new spatial material. So this is going to be an override material. Great, click on it. Under flags, top one,
yeah,
very top, transparent on. And you go down to albedo, which is 3 down.
Yep.
And just give it a nice albedo color. And make sure it's got some alpha. Let's say alpha at half. Mikey doesn't have the plugin installed with the color palette, so it's going to be out of palette. So you've got RGBA, make sure your alpha is about 50%. Nope.
Have I not got it there?
No.
Okay.
Click on the albedo. Yep.
And
see the alpha?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, one more thing.
Make it,
scroll down to not roughness, refraction.
Oh, refraction. Yep.
Enabled. Now roughness will make a difference.
Oh, okay. So let's make. Oh, yes.
Okay, so now get into the game. I have some roughness, otherwise the refraction will look weird. Yeah.
There we go.
Get into game. Yes, you can absolutely filter out which bones are being blended and which aren't.
Oh yeah,
it just doesn't look good because animations aren't designed for that. Like we tried that, and it just looks like the character's exhausted.
It varies, doesn't it? It varies from actually that works really well. In fact, that's what I was going to lead on to earlier when I was talking about the strafing. So there's absolutely no way you can do a blend to get the strafing working correctly. You're going to have an actual strafe animation. Once you've got that, you can blend in and out of the strafe, but not necessarily solve it. This is an interesting refraction.
It is, isn't it? I was thinking about using this for one of the potions. And the other thing I thought was you could have a stone skin or an iron skin potion where you just do a material override for a metallic or a stone effect.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yoink! Yoink. I think I mean yeet, but yeah.
You can also do floppy body in the middle of the water.
It's okay, I'm just chilling at the bottom of the river.
The water elemental.
Well, yes, I am that kind of colour. I'm almost invisible against the sky. That is so neat.
If the light is in that direction, because we only have one light in this scene.
Yes, I go.
And that's why, in the other direction, you look solid.
Yeah. I could see this. You could definitely make a cloak of this.
It's a fun effect, isn't it? But it wouldn't have to be this. You could also do like a fire body and then put fire particles like attached to various bones.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Oh, I fell down the stairs.
Kind of.
No. Whee! That'll never get old. Right.
And there's all kinds of little things going on there that weren't immediately obvious. Like you have to disable movement once you've done that. Otherwise, the player will move, but the mesh won't.
Yes.
Because the ragdoll is on the bones and the armature, not on the player scene.
It's very interesting how the hierarchy affects, and I have this issue in Blender all the time. Sometimes one hierarchy works with a certain thing, and then the same hierarchy does not. It doesn't work anymore. You need to change it around. Often with parenting, some tools in Blender actually use parenting as a way of instancing, for instance, is a great example. But that may screw up how you've got a rig. So when it starts coming to character animation or anything animation, to be honest, you have to make sure that the order of your meshes and of your armatures is a certain way. There are a couple of ways of doing it, and I won't go deep at the moment with them because I can feel myself segueing. Whoop.
There's a bunch of things, and I'm hoping that by next week we'll have the basics of NPC in there. At which point we'll have combat. Hopefully some dodging, some NPC behavior. But that depends on a lot of things. But I've got a really interesting behavior tree plugin that I'm playing with. So, yeah. And I really like the ability of just doing fun refraction effects or shader effects as an override with certain potions.
Yes. I think we've got a bit of time left. Do you want to go through the last bits on the Trello board? Finish that
sure.
off?
How far did we get?
We got to character creation.
Okay, yeah, we did that. So, ready?
So further down the line, we have quests.
A reason to go on.
A bit
so
dark.
First, we give you a town, and it was better than what it was before. A town and village asset pack. So this is exterior assets for a town and village. And the idea here is that there'll be NPCs in the village that are a class of NPC, but not a class of enemies, so villagers. You can build up this village and get more and more NPCs, but they'll give you certain quests. They might be handcrafted, they might be procedural, it might be go and collect 7 skulls, it might be take a picture of you next to a dragon. I don't know yet. With quests comes questing. We might play with a dialogic plugin for this. I'm not sure, but there's actually quite a lot to play with when you're dealing with quests, right? You've got to keep track of a lot of information. So there's a lot there to play with.
And you could, with quests, you can very easily end up in a paradox, or you may end up if we did enable the killing of a character. If you didn't handle that correctly, you could break the entire game because suddenly a critical quest is not available. And of course, in many games, you can't kill certain characters, for instance.
Right.
That often,
which brings us to a faction thing, right? Yeah. So some villagers want one thing, some want another. Maybe different kinds of NPCs don't get on, or they do get on if you do certain things. Like that gives us that option. So maybe skeletons and goblins can be turned against each other with certain actions.
You could have a
building new kingdom mechanic, Mikey.
That's supposed to be I just didn't type it out fully.
So yeah, the idea is as you go down and get this loot, you can spend some of that loot. I mean, you can spend it to upgrade your equipment and get some new fancy abilities and all the rest of it. But you can also upgrade the village, which brings in different NPCs, brings in a potion merchant or whatever, a librarian, drive-through cinema.
And it's about choices at that point. You know, if you risk not being able to upgrade your own equipment, but you might not have the best equipment available to you unless you upgrade the blacksmith or something along those lines.
And that brings us towards the ability to do traps and proximity events. And that's both things in the dungeon, like a spike trap or a boulder trap, but maybe stuff that the player can place. So you could put down a spike trap and lead an NPC into it, you know, things like that. Then we get to further customization, which gives you additional weapon and armor assets. Systemic gameplay. So the idea here is have the property flammable, and if fire touches flammable, it now gets the quality on fire. Well, if the things next to it are flammable, they will get the quality on fire.
So
right?
Fire can spread, and again, if you're on fire and you have, I don't know, a water arrow or you jump into the river, you're now wet. So you may be more
vulnerable. And if you set fire to the table, it will slowly lose health until it's gone.
Yes.
Right? And just put in a bunch of these things. So maybe if it's frozen, might be a quality put in. How do frozen things react to things like heat and fire and electricity?
And
and that leads to all kinds of fun mechanics.
Yeah, like slowing down enemies, giving you more chance to kill them, or the enemies slowing you down.
Or pouring oil all over the floor to make the floor flammable.
And
then when enemies run into it, and slippy, and when enemies run onto it, you set fire to it. Modular characters. This is a Mikey.
Yes, but as we've already alluded to, making sure you've got the base character made. We're then talking about being able to swap things out on your character, and it work perfectly. So all of your characters can wear armor. All of your characters can change their clothes. All of your characters can change their heads. That's not really an option you may. You can upgrade your head in game. Why not?
It's things like you find a fancy wizard hat, and it's a really lovely wizard hat, so you want that wizard hat.
Yes.
Right? It's things like that.
And making sure that when you put them on your character, they animate appropriately as well for that particular character.
Class-dependent modular AI. So what we mean here is you have a skeleton, you have a goblin, you have whatever else, right?
Yeah.
But instead of all skeletons behave a certain way, or we have a skeleton archer and we have a skeleton thing, we can drop in the AI for skeleton, for berserker, the AI for healer, the AI for archer, and they will behave in that way with access to those weapons, regardless of what they are. So skeletons are all skeletons, goblins are all goblins, but you could have a goblin healer, you could have a goblin berserker, you could have and it's just a drag and drop, or even a procedural thing.
And we could also have temperaments in there. So you may have some enemies that when they reach a certain health will flee. Or some when they reach a certain health will go berserk. You know, there's lots of different qualities that you can have. So depending on what class of character they are, their behavior would change accordingly.
I should point out, by the way, this is going to be a reasonably simplified system. Like, we're not going to go full Shadows of Mordor here, specifically because Warner Brothers patented the Nemesis system, so we don't want to get too close to that.
No.
I can't believe they patented that. And then a crafting system, because, you know, crafting. Then we get to smarter and harder.
Yep.
And now I've got a Carder in my head, who's a fantastic musician and academic. An enemies asset pack, because that's good. And then a course on how to make creatures and monsters, right? So a course on how to make your own NPC enemies.
Yeah, and we'd have already covered bipedal animations, and of course, at this point, your monsters may not be bipedal. Who knows?
That's true. They might be quintpedal. Better AI and persistence, which I think, you know, is pretty obvious, but the idea is that there is more persistence in the enemy. So if you leave the dungeon and come back, that enemy is still there.
And
behavior
it
trees
could even be linked
into
into the questing system as well, where they remember what you've done at some point. So it's not just like a fresh quest every time. Well, as I say, they remember what you've done. Behavior trees.
Behavior trees and state machines. Now, in some ways, these two kind of contradict each other, so we might do one or the other, just because it's quite hard to get them both working at the same time, although it might work quite well. Like, I need to do more experimentation with that. Multiple enemy types and classes, data storage and management. So we start talking about larger databases and how we deal with them, and do we externalize them? Do we make them internal only? Is this going to be a JSON or a config file? Different things we can do there.
Yeah.
And
Expert
then
combat. What a
piece of me. Who's Wayner? Extra animations, combo attacks, dodging and wall jumping, intermediate movement and combat, platforms, puzzles, and traps, because everyone loves platform puzzles in the middle of an action RPG, and slowing down of time.
What was it, Prince of Persia? You know, that was the remake. That was pretty good when it came to being able to do the things like the wall running and all the rest of it. So that was a lot of fun.
And hello, Durgan. And then we get onto the fancy things with like interior buildings, sound effects, voiceovers, shaders, particles processing. So yeah, that's what we're looking at right now. So what I would think is we should run the demo one more time and then see if people have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, or interpretive dances.
I think that's a great idea.
I think so too, because it was one of mine.
Aha! I'm going to make the character. The character's going to stay glass.
Funny you should say that, Durgan. I've just started playing Guild Wars 2 again.
Okay, let's actually make sure people can see.
Although everyone complains about the jumping puzzles. I really like the jumping puzzles, but...
So here we go with our glass character. Brand new.
Oh, right. You kept the glass on, didn't you?
Yeah. So I've said it before, but I'll say it again. So this is obviously familiar territory if you've seen our progression so far, but we have a new character, and I've somewhat hidden him at the moment, but he's our base mesh character who will expand next week, hopefully into a fully fledged character of sorts, and a few things we've implemented. What's this thing on the ground, Yann? Why have we put this here?
That is fire. I put that there to test the damage and health system I made today.
Ow! Ah!
Durgan's gone full Ron Burgundy.
It's okay. I'm not dead. I'm just watching the stars. So yes, we have a stamina system now which affects running, or your ability to run, and ability to attack.
Yes. So... this is from a gameplay point of view, right? We don't want sprinting to be infinite. We don't want attacks to be infinite. There has to be some sort of decision-making going on a moment-by-moment basis. And when we start putting in dodging and so forth, then it's going to be all about positioning and timing, which is what we're looking for this kind of game.
A risk-reward. If you go in for a double attack, you're going to do a lot more damage than a single attack, but you're going to use up more stamina.
You're also going to feel really clever if you time it right and you dodge past an enemy, do a heavy attack, and dodge out the way.
But once you've run out of stamina, you cannot do anything else. You can't sprint or attack until you've got it back entirely. So it's almost like a mini game at that point, a stamina management game.
Now, we'll have to see how it actually works once we've got NPCs in combat in there, because maybe this is too difficult. But that's fine, because we can tweak the stamina values, right? That's easy. We can make it so you recover stamina much faster. So maybe it's just a half second, but it's that possibility. It's also things like when you're holding an axe, your idle animation is different. The two types of attacks can only be done when you're not... when you're armed, not... when you're not unarmed. It's like an awkward sentence. Yes. And you can't immediately switch from one attack to the other. You have to wait for it to finish. So if Mikey just spams attack, it will only happen once the first animation is stopped.
Yeah.
We also have the basics of an inventory system so far, which I'm quite happy with. And yeah, there's a lot going on here.
Oh yes, I can go and pick up some potions, can't I? Just around the corner here. I forgot about that the last time. I said I'd come back for them. I didn't, so we got 4 health potions nearby. Or...
well, maybe they're health potions. I don't know. And of course, if this becomes a roguelite, which is one of the expansions, then what those potions do is going to change run by run.
Yes. So it might be...
because that's traditional with Rogue.
Yes. Oh, I seem to be dying after drinking this red one.
Or it reminds me of the role-playing game Numenera, which is an amazing role-playing game.
Yes.
Specifically the pen and paper one, but the CRPG one is fun too. But I was playing Numenera one day, and Numenera has this thing where you get old technology and you try and figure out what it does. And one of my players found this belt buckle that would cover you in armor, except he didn't realize he'd failed the roll and misidentified it. So in the middle of combat, he turns on his belt and it launders his clothing and makes him smell minty fresh.
That's fantastic.
I like this glass effect.
It's gonna have to be. It's gonna have to be a potion of invisibility,
Or an NPC type or something.
glass armor. I like it. I like it a lot. Oh, fantastic.
So that's where we are right now. So we're coming up to the hour. So if people have any questions, comments, ideas, yodels.
Did the link work earlier? That's quite important. So you guys can have a look at this when we're not showing it to you on the screen. Does that work?
It looks like it's public.
I believe anybody can comment on it as well. Keep the comments clean, guys. Keep the comments clean.
Your mama.
Here we go.
How large can a loaded area be currently without causing issues? And how this we optimize for the final course? Smaller dungeons or some kind of LOD? So currently we're using a grid map, which is already pretty performant.
Yeah.
I've not run into a problem with that, and I know when we did Godo Getaway, I was making cities that were 2K squared.
Yeah.
We didn't do that a lot because it's kind of boring to drive through when you're looking for someone else, like one other person in a city that size. But I feel like that should be fine. The real issue starts becoming when you have too many active light sources or too many rigid bodies in one place. But in that case, what you can do is disable the physics and all lighting when you're a certain distance from the player.
Yeah. Yes, lights can pose a problem, can't they?
We won't be doing LOD because Godo's built-in LOD isn't actually hooked in yet until 4. There is an LOD function in the mesh, but when you mouse over the tooltip, it says this isn't plugged in.
And the level of assets that we're going for, level of detail, isn't really going to be a particular issue. And I think for a lot of, unless you're really going for a dense mesh or set of meshes in your scene, you're not going to run into too many issues.
There's also the idea that
with a large world.
With a dungeon crawler like this, traditionally you'd start with one level and then work your way down and down and down. So you don't have one giant dungeon, you have a series of smaller ones heading down. That does mean that when you want to exit the dungeon, I would probably have it when you get to the staircase, you'll have the option, do you want to go back up to the level or to the surface? Because otherwise, if you get to level 9 and then you're trying to run all the way back, that's kind of dull, especially if you've killed everything on the way. I mean, that reminds me of the expansion for Deus Ex, where they make you go all the way down to the bottom of a complex, and then they make you go all the way to the surface again, and then all the way back down again. It's like I'm commuting at this point.
Yes, making a game compelling without making it. There's a brilliant Steam Cloud Punk. I got there in the end.
You know, I played Cloudpunk recently. It was very pretty.
It is a very pretty game, and there is a story, but the whole game revolves around you delivering things.
Yep.
And
Space Uber.
It's Space Uber, yeah, exactly. And it was a lot of fun, and I like to think myself is quite good at being able to play a game that doesn't have story and make something from it, make something of it. And so I just went around and sort of like made my own little missions, and I was stalking people, all that lot. But it's a very, very aesthetically pleasing game.
Oh, it's got a gorgeous atmosphere. Melikos left a comment. I don't know where.
Hunt the comment.
Oh, I hate this game. Yeah, we'll find it.
Yeah. Nice.
So yeah, that's where we are right now. We're hoping that this time next week we'll be in a position to start actually building the page for the Kickstarter. It won't be live yet, but we want to get it ready so that when we go live, it's not a big surprise for everybody, so that people, know it exists. Because otherwise, trying to get the initial momentum going when not that many people know it exists.
We kind of forgot that last time with our series on Mag Racer. So we did at the time before we built up towards Godo Getaway because there was an underlying tone as we were building that and showing it off, etc. And then we didn't do the same thing with Mag Racer. So hopefully this one will be much better because of that. Yeah, he's left one on the weapons assets pack. It just has a little speech icon on there.
I see that now.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. So we know that works. Do we have any questions? I've not had the main thing open.
How large can the loaded area be? How simple would the weapons be?
Well, weapons can be...
What number is Durgan thinking of?
42.
I know what number he's thinking of. And Matt, you should be ashamed of yourself. This is a family show.
Nice. What number am I thinking of?
8.
No. You're close, though, because it's pi.
I hate this game.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. Watch out for more as
Did you not want to answer how simple would the weapons be?
I kind of started to, and then I got forgetful. Yes, forgetful is now a word. The weapons, they will be at the same level of complexity as the player character will end up being. I know that's a bit of a woolly answer. They'll be in proportion with the rest of the world.
We're going to keep the aesthetic of the dungeon asset pack, right? So that big, chunky, simplified feel.
They're going to be quite simple. Although, as we go through, there's no harm when it comes to designing of baking down higher detailed on a much more detailed mesh. Actually baking that down to a lower poly one. That's something we'll go through if we reach that point, because that is a more advanced and more fulfilling topic. And being able to swap those out and having, of course, the textures swap out at the same time, those are things that have to be optimized for, because if you're swapping them in game, you're going to have a slowdown whilst things are loaded. Or do you load them all the time, but then you need more memory to have them constantly loaded and ready to go? So it'll be lots of fun. Yeah.
So I think that covers it. So,
nice.
Mikey, thank you for having me. I had a lovely time.
You're welcome. And we should do this again, maybe same time next week.
Every week, yeah. Thank you for joining us, folks. I hope you're all as excited as we are. We're working hard to make this really something kind of fun and special.
Yeah.
Oh, I know one thing we never mentioned.
What's that?
Godo 4.
Yes.
That's kind of a big one. I don't know how we forgot that. If Godo 4 drops during the Kickstarter or a little bit afterwards, I think we've decided we're just going to have to do this in Godo 4, because so many things are changing and it solves so many of the bugs I've got right now.
Yeah.
And makes things so much more performant and pretty, especially with the lighting, that I think if we release it in Godo 3, no one would want it anymore, because it's no longer relevant.
Yeah, I would concur with that. I don't see Godo 4 being delayed much further. I know things have been delayed. Due
its
to
development,
the world being as it is. But yeah, I think Godo 4 will be great. And we'll have to see.
I agree. Okay. So
Roderick says, what happens if it gets released just before the Kickstarter? I think
we'll wait for Godo 5.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. And
thank you, folks. And we'll see you very soon. And don't forget to say hi on the Discord. Bye.
Bye.
Press it.